June 6, 1971. Los Angeles Airport, one of the busiest airports in North America. On the platform, a McDonnell Douglas DC-9-31 of Hughes Airwest is preparing to make flight RW706 on the route Los Angeles-Seattle with stops in the states of Utah, Idaho, and Washington. 49 people are boarding the aircraft, 44 passengers and 5 crew members. Douglas will be driven by an experienced crew consisting of Captain, 50-year-old Theodore Nicolai, co-pilot, 49-year-old Price Bruner, and 3 flight attendants work in the cabin. After completing the checklists, the aircraft left the platform and headed for the runway.
Airway 706, takeoff cleared, runway 24 left, heading climb 250.
Understood, U-24 left, climb 250.
At 6 p.m., the DC-9 take off from Los Angeles.
Airway 706 turn right heading 260.
At the beginning of the flight, the aircraft should head west and then turn northeast and head to the first destination of the Salt Lake City route. For minutes after takeoff, co-pilot Bruner contacted the control center.
Los Angeles Center, good evening, Airway 706, climbing to 5,600.
At the Los Angeles Control Center, a young trainee picked up radar information from Flight 706 passing 5,600 feet.
Airway 706, turn left, heading 040, maintain heading until reaching Daggett.
The DC-9 crew confirmed receipt of the information.
Okay, 040, heading for Daggett.
This was the last radio message from Flight RW706. An hour ago at 1700 hours at Fallon Air Force Base, the McDonnell Douglas F-4 B-18MC Phantom II fighter of the U.S. Navy is preparing to take off. The plane should be from Fallon to El Toro. The crew of the fighter consisted of 2 people. Pilot, 27-year-old First Lieutenant James Phillips. Radar flight operator, 24-year-old Senior Lieutenant Christopher Skice. At 1716, the F-4 took off from Fallon and first climbed to 460 meters before climbing to 15,400 feet to pass over mountains in scattered clouds 50 miles from the departure airbase. After crossing the mountains, the crew descended to an altitude of 5,600 feet and maintained this altitude until passing Bakersfield. The aircraft flew visually through VFR, as it had malfunctions, the transponder and radio did not work, and there was also a leak from the oxygen system, and there was interference in the operation of the radar. So the fighter pilots had to fly at low altitudes. About 15 miles north of the Bakersfield Flight Information Center, the F-4 crew received a weather report at El Toro Air Force Base. The fighter crew then decided to deviate east of the originally intended route and head for Palmdale, thereby bypassing Los Angeles with its busy air traffic. The fighter flew at a minimum altitude of about 1,000 feet from the ground, but 15 miles northwest of Palmdale, due to constantly deteriorating visibility, the crew was forced to climb to 15,400 feet. After entering the horizontal flight, the distance to the El Toro airbase was determined, which was 50 miles. Since the aircraft was flying visually, the pilot had to constantly look around to avoid colliding with other aircraft. For a complete inspection, the pilot rolled the aileron barrel. This is when the aircraft rotates around the longitudinal axis 360 degrees within 3 seconds. At this moment, the speed of the fighter was 419 knots. Meanwhile, our DC-9 aircraft was climbing and was in the Los Angeles ATC sector.
Airway 706, there are 2 aircraft in your area.
The crew of Flight RW-706 received warnings from the air traffic controller about 2 aircraft in the vicinity. At the same time, the dispatchers did not have any unrest. In the fighter, the flight operator Skice watched the radar. But due to interference, he did not see other aircraft on his screen. Suddenly, in his peripheral vision, he noticed another aircraft. Glancing there, Skice saw an airliner flying across the course at 50 degrees to the right.
Watch out, Rich.
Skice called out to Phillips about the danger of a collision, to which he immediately made an evasive maneuver. But without listening to the warning, he did not know exactly where the other plane was. And therefore the maneuver he had taken turned out to be wrong. 10 seconds later, at 15,150 feet, the DC-9 was rammed by an F-4. Having lost part of the left plane, the fighter, rotating around its axis, went into a fall. The flight operator Skice, having seen numerous failure signals, ejected, and soon descended safely by parachute. The out-of-control DC-9, with the cockpit sheared off, also went into a dive and, 1 mile from the point of impact, crashed into a canyon and was completely destroyed. An out-of-control F-4 crashed into Bliss Mountain 1 mile from the DC-9. Collision over San Gabriel Mountains kills 50 people. Phillips fighter pilot, and all on board the DC-9, 49 people. When the DC-9 marker disappeared from the radar screens, a state of emergency was declared. Soon the crew of the military aircraft reported to the dispatcher that they had seen an explosion in the area of the missing Flight 706 marker. Soon the crash site was found. The cause of the collision was investigated by the National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB. Investigators had to find out how the military and civilian aircraft collided. Initially, surviving flight operator Christopher E. Skice, when questioned by investigators, stated that the DC-9 rammed their aircraft, but there were inaccuracies in his words, after which the investigators were questioned. The DC-9 was equipped with a primitive flight data recorder that recorded basic information about the aircraft's airspeed, acceleration, heading and altitude on metal foil tapes. In addition, the aircraft was equipped with a simple cockpit voice recorder that recorded all conversations taking place in the cockpit. Both recorders were found and delivered to Washington for analysis, but it was not possible to read information from them, since they were completely burned out. After collecting the wreckage and interviewing witnesses, investigators verified that the F-4 fighter rammed the DC-9 while performing barrel aerobatics. The NTSB published its final report on August 30, 1972. The National Transportation Safety Board determines that the failure of both crews to see each other was the likely cause of the collision, but acknowledges that they had only marginal opportunities to detect, assess the situation and avoid the collision. Also a key factor was that the fighter pilots did not request radar control knowing that their transponder was not working. After this disaster, many changes were made to the aviation system, including close cooperation between civil and military ATC services. And also, the restriction of flights of military aircraft in civil air corridors.